All right. So we just finished up a recording here with Rachel Francis. This is somebody who had actually reached out to me on Instagram, and we had exchanged conversation back and forth about what she does and what she has to offer. And one of the things that really drew me to her was that she has this beautiful way of mixing psychology in with more like the spiritual woo-woo side of things. And she bridges the gap between the two and is able to help people virtually. She's able to help people. She's in Italy right now. She's originally from Ireland, but she has a vast reach and a vast knowledge. And you're going to hear this through this podcast. This is going to be packed with a lot of really amazing information. I'm using in this podcast as well. I'm using some patient testimonies and things too, and how she may be able to give advice for any patients that I'm working with currently who are going through tough times with spouses, and how to really better yourself through those tough times. So I'm really excited to share this with you. Again, Rachel, thank you for being on this show, and let's get it going. All right, everybody, we have Rachel Francis here. She is an empowerment mentor and coach, and this has been a long time coming. We've been trying to coordinate times, but you are in Ireland, so time zones are a little bit different.
I'm actually not. I'm actually in Italy.
In Italy? Oh, okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
Fair enough. In Italy. So that still counts. So it's still overseas. Yeah. So I appreciate you taking the time out of your night to join me here today. I'm really grateful for you.
Oh, no worries at all. I'm happy to be here, and I'm delighted to. I mean, any kind of conversation like this, I just love having them. I could talk for hours, so happy to be here.
There you go. We probably will end up talking for a while, and it's going to be great content, so I'm excited for it. So why don't you tell the audience what is it that you do? So when we talk about empowerment coaching and mentoring, what is it that you do?
So I primarily help people transform their core insecurity into their unique kind of inner power and emotional freedom to essentially become the best version of themselves. Now, the way that I do this is a little bit different. It's a little bit unique because I actually focus on the combination of mindset or mainstream psychology with metaphysics, so the spiritual side of things, and the powerful blend of the two. I suppose I say what I do is a little bit different because I think there are a lot of experts out there in the field who, rightfully so, kind of prioritize one area, and they say, if you focus on this, you'll fix your whole life, kind of thing. I'm very much an advocate of saying, like, we are in a very 360 human experience. We need to look at all the different angles and combine everything together into one powerful package. So that's the way I help people.
Okay. And so how did you mentally prep to be like, I feel called to do this and blend the two? How did that arise? How did you arrive at what you do?
Well, I mean, I suppose like all of us, we kind of go through our own little personal transformation to get to where we are, to be able to actually preach what we preach and, give this type of transformation to other people. We kind of had to walk through it ourselves first. And I think that's true for so many of us in the personal development field or in the health field. And for me, I think it probably came about where I was like that, like focusing on one area and then being like, okay, now I've hit a roadblock and I feel like I can't go any further. Or I'm like, okay, I understand everything, but I feel like I'm missing something here. Something doesn't link up with something else that I'm interested in. You know what I mean? So it's like, maybe like so many of us, I started off kind of, mindset and trying to understand my life very logically and plan it all out and all of that. And that was all great. And then I got to a point where I was like, but I have this other feeling that there's something else going on that I can't quite tangibly grasp onto, but there is something else there that the logical side of things, that you can't really cover in your therapy session. There's something else there. And I feel like I started to expand my own knowledge and education. And I went coaches have coaches. I got coached myself and did all the mentoring programs and things like that. And I feel like yeah, I saw it in action. When you combine both of those things, when you combine the logic with the illogical side of things, what can happen?
So when we talk, that's awesome. But when we talk
Mm.
about that, it's easy if you're in this space, or if, I mean, my listeners are steeped in kind of hearing these terms. Elaborate a little bit more for like, what do you, when you're talking about the metaphysical and you're talking about the typical or the traditional therapy approach, give a little bit
Yeah.
more detail on that so that way people can kind of follow along as well.
Sure. Well, I mean, I suppose, first of all, looking at the therapy side of things or the mainstream psychology, you know, I'm trained in cognitive behavioral therapy, neurolinguistic programming, all that kind of thing, which kind of shows you, okay, your thoughts, the way your thoughts are programming you essentially to behave a certain way, to respond to your world a certain way. And then the therapy approach is, you know, really just trying to have a different understanding, almost like change your perspective of your, what I call your 3D reality. So everything that's going on in your external world, what you're perceiving as happening in your external world and how that's affecting you. Okay. Now, for the metaphysical side of things, I'm talking about energy. So, energy in the sense of what you're embodying, so how you're feeling, but also energy in terms of what you are actually attracting into your life experience. Like, where is the connection between who you are being and therefore what you are experiencing? And is there a connection there? If you were to really look at it, and look at it also in quite a grounded way, you know, not in a woo way, not in this kind of like, oh, you know, I don't know, let's meditate our troubles away. Not like that, but
Yeah.
actually being like, okay, so I had this core belief that I identified as, for example, um, I'm not good, I'm not a good student.
Mhm.
What was the consequence of that? What did I actually experience in my real life because of that belief? Was there a link there, or was
Mhm.
it all just random? And you know, in the way that I coach people on that, it's always coming back to the idea of your self-concept.
Mhm.
So all of our thoughts carry energy, all of our core beliefs carry energy. And if we are all energetic beings, and also everything outside of us is energy, you know, energy like attracts like. Okay. So you can almost look at it in a very scientific way as well. And yeah, it's just a very interesting aspect of it when you look at the energy attraction side of things and go in deep to looking at who you are being and therefore what you are attracting and experiencing.
Yeah, that's beautiful, and that's a very elegant way to bridge the gap between the two and kind of explain it. And we are,
Mm-hmm.
like, at the end of the day, we are just all energy, and our words, like you say, they hold energy, and what we say has different vibrational frequencies that come along with it. There are high resonating words like abundance and, you know, excellence and those types of things, and then there's shame, guilt, despair, that are all on the lower side of things. And a question that I have for you is, do you see a lot of the times when you're working with patients and clients, do you see a lot of the times that these are captured realities that aren't even theirs, that they're continuing to portray in their own life?
Captured in the sense of, you mean they're taking it on from their environment?
From their environment, or like say like they model behavior. Say that they had a tough childhood and they saw how their mom responded or
Mm-hmm.
acted as a mother and as a wife, and so therefore you accept that as the model of what you're supposed to be, and then in
Mm-hmm.
that you feel that inner turmoil and you're like, I don't know if this is right for me. Do you see that type of stuff happen a lot?
Yes, every day, pretty much. Yeah.
I had a feeling.
Um, it's a big, yeah, it's a big part of the work that I do, because the work that I do is essentially deconditioning, like exactly what you're saying. Because I think even if you were to even look at the analogy of, you know, the logic versus the metaphysical, you know, woo-woo aspect of things, we're conditioned to believe in the logic, but not to believe in the other.
Mhm.
So there's a whole lot of deconditioning happening in all of that process as well. But I think part of coming back to your true self, both coming back and also cultivating, you know, who you want to be, we must get to the place where we accept that we have to let go of everything that we've been told and almost like start from scratch, like from a blank page. And I would say to people, like, just get out a pen and a paper and literally write down everything you want to be if you had zero limitations. Like, if no one had ever said anything to you ever about who you are, and there was nothing blocking you, like, who would you want to be? And even that simple practice, even though it seems stupid and unrealistic, it can actually open up that part of your brain that you had shut down for so long, and even just allowing yourself to see yourself a little bit differently. So to answer your question, yes, every day.
Good. I like that's what I said. I had a feeling, because I see it and I don't do what you do, and that comes up a lot, and I'm like, good grief, like, it's hard, and it's a lot of baggage that doesn't belong to you, that a lot of people have to drop or get rid of. But it's coming up with that understanding of like, hey, it doesn't have to be that way. And then it turns into the generational thing. Well, my mom was like that, my grandma was like that, my great grandma was like that. And well, you don't have to be like them. That was just a choice of what was passed down. So I'm really happy that you're in there doing that work.
Yeah, it's very rewarding. I think, like, I often say to people who definitely feel like they're struggling with that idea, you know, if you look at everyone in the world, everyone's doing something completely different. Should one person feel ashamed because they're different from the other person? No, like, that doesn't make any sense, you know? So I think we were all given desires and particular needs and wants in our lifetimes for a reason. We were given those in order to try and pursue them, to try and bring them into life. And I think that's really where the true beauty of each person's individual life comes in, you know, of following that. So yeah.
Do you feel like social conditioning has a huge part on that as well? Not just with, you know, mother, father, but what society feels like you should be. Do you feel like you deal with that too?
Totally. It all plays a factor in it. I mean, social conditioning, culture, like what culture you come from. I mean, in general, whatever you identify as has the power to hold you back or help you blossom, you know. And you have to be very, very aware, like hyper aware of what you're identifying as, because, you know, I always, you know, I often have clients who have been diagnosed with diseases and disorders. And it's often the case where one of the first things they will say to me is, hey, I'm here, I want to work with you. However, you should know that I have this thing, or I am this, you know.
I knew you were going there. Yep.
Yeah. And I say, okay, I'm here to listen to you. Let's talk about it. However, the work that we're going to do here together, you need to let me know if you want to keep this label and you want to be defined by it, and everything else is going to be an extension of that label, or it's holding you back and you can recognize it's holding you back, and now we're going to go in the opposite way so that you are not held back by this I am statement, you know. I am depressed, I am anxious, even, you know, different disorders, bipolar disorder, anything like that, you know. Anything that we identify as, we have to be very, very choosy with everything that we call ourselves, and that goes for everything across the board.
I've been told that our bodies always want to be right, and so when you tell yourself a story, your body tries to gravitationally pull things to you that will back up the story that you continue to tell yourself.
Totally. Yeah, it's our bodies, you know, including our natural response in terms of our behavior, like what we project out of ourselves in our environmental field. And it's that thing, I'm sure I actually heard it like years ago, and I remember it was Tony Robbins who said it, and it really struck me at the time. But he was saying, like, you know, nothing that is unnatural to who we believe we are will stick with us as a habit. So basically, it's like saying, you know, we only do things which we believe are natural for us. So our behaviors must match up, must correspond to our identities, or else they'll just that behavior will fall away eventually. It's why, you know, like new habits don't stick, New Year's resolutions fall away. It's because we don't identify as the person who naturally does those things.
Yeah.
So I think exactly, even like what you were saying, it's kind of like the same point. You know, our body is the intuition. Our body is the thing that is always right. Our mind is a little bit all over the place. It can change.
Yeah.
We can change any thought we want to, but we have to kind of lead with the body as well. Definitely.
Yeah. And with that too, the impact that has just from a health perspective, when you deconstruct the thought patterns and you rebuild with new ones and you change that perception, you're dealing with a sector or division of science that is epigenetics. So epigenetics is when your thoughts and perceptions of an event have an impact on your body. And I like to use the example because I played football. If you put me on a football field, I'm going to be ridiculously excited. I'm going to be so pumped up. I'm going to feel like I'm a natural. If you take my wife and put her on the football field and tell her to pad up and get in there, she's going to get me the heck out of here. It's the same scenario, the same exact thing, but two totally different perceptions of what's going to happen. I'll feel happy, she'll feel stressed, and our bodies are going to produce the chemicals to reinforce the thought that we have received.
Yeah, definitely. It's the positive and the negative associations, you know, that we all just pick up as we go along. And it's, you know, a lot of things like that, we feel like, oh, it's so out of our control. It's just life, and life is hard. And that's just the way it is. And even though it's so funny, like even you say that example, even though we know it's different for another person, like for you, your perception is different, we're still like, no, life is hard. Like we still kind of just, we stay with our opinion, you know?
Yeah.
And we don't recognize that actually we have the power to control our perception. We are the ones actually choosing what meaning we give to everything that we experience. So it's such a worthwhile thing to do, to claim that power and to, you know, take that time to really choose a kind of how we want to see things, you know, make things work for us, make things serve us, you know. Why stay miserable? Why stay in a lower frequency, like you're saying, a lower set point, you know, when we don't have to?
Yeah. When you do the work and you have the patience, and when I was laughing, I hear it all the time too. It's mainly like I have fibromyalgia, or I'm diabetic, or I've got low blood pressure. So like they claim that identity, and in a way, like sometimes I'm probably not as polished and kind as you are with this stuff, but I just blast it. I'm like, no, screw that. No, that's not what we're believing. We're changing that mindset today. And whether you believe me or not, I'm going to alter your physiology. That's going to change. And that's like my mindset, just bulldozed through it. Again, not as kind as I probably could be, but when you do that, there can be a sense of like this identity crisis where an old version dies off. How do you bridge the gap between who you were and who you're called to be? And how do you kind of walk with them over there, so that way at the end you can kind of burn that bridge of who they were to move on as to who they were called to be?
Well, you know, the logistics of it is that, like, I normally, when I bring my clients through the full transformation, I actually have a program that I've structured to guide them through that in a curated step-by-step process. So that in itself, I mean, having that structure there supports the client naturally anyway, because it's not like everything all at once. It's like, you're a new person today, you know, throw it away. Aside from that, though, there is that structure there. But aside from that, I think it's about, you know, even day one, when the client walks in through my, you know, online door, they're there for a reason. They're why at that point, before even we start talking, is already strong enough that they recognize that something has to change. So to focus in on that, to focus in on their vision for themselves and for their life, and what has happened to them so far, who have they been so far, that they've reached this place where they feel like, hold on a second, like, I don't want to live like this anymore, you know? So it's really honing in on that vision and bringing it to life, and the vibrancy of it, the vitality of it, what that feels like, the difference the gap, almost like what you were saying, between who they were and who they are going to be. And because of that, an extension of that is the rest of their life and how that will naturally begin to shift because they're becoming a new person. I think that kind of transition that you're talking about could also be a little bit of like more so like an ego death. A little bit of it's letting go of the surface layer of who they believed they were, how they operated on a day-to-day basis, but at that surface level. Because I do think dreams and hopes and that kind of vision you have for yourself is deeper than that surface level. The surface level is essentially, you know, when they wake up in the morning, they say, okay, now I'm going to make my breakfast. And then I drive to work at this time, and I drive in my car, and my car is a black car. And then I get to work, and then I talk to this person next to my desk, and all these types of things. Okay. So that's like their identity at that surface level. But when they come to me, they want to give exposure. They want to give air to who they dream to be. And that's where I always want to redirect that focus when things seem difficult. When the client says to me, oh, like I fell back again last week and I was having all these negative thoughts and I reacted really badly to my partner and I said all these things and I just fell out of myself, fell out of my alignment. And in those moments, you know, that's when I say like, okay, let's come back to what we were looking at. Let's come back to your reason why you're here. Let's come back to the work we've already done. Look how far you've already come. Look what you've done for yourself. Look what you've created. So there's a few different elements happening there. But again, you know, it could also be that the environmental factor, that conditioning, you know, what are we still holding on to from our families, from our parents, from our friends, that we're like, I don't know if I'm ready to let go of that part of me yet.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm ready to be judged by people. But there's a lot of acceptance that comes into the work with that as well.
Do you see a lot of the times, and this is one of the questions I was like typing down as you were talking, the new version of them being reintroduced to a spouse, to kids, or to family? Do you feel like people struggle with that step? Because I feel like that may be like the hardest thing for people who are kind of transforming.
It really depends, because if you're going to look at the metaphysical aspect of this, the law of energy naturally states anyway that if people are corresponding to you, everything is shifting anyway. When you start to shift, the other person also starts to shift to match you. So I actually don't experience that in relation to the external person in their life having resistance. The resistance might come up if my client has the resistance, which is then mirrored outside of them anyway. Okay. So again, we're always looking at that mirror formation. So almost leading on from the last question that you asked me, you know, if that person is kind of holding on to their old selves into your life, and they're almost like taking a few steps forward, taking a few steps back, not really going all the way, then yes, sometimes I do experience my clients, they have this kind of resistance. They might go to work and someone makes a comment about like, oh, you think you're so great by doing this coaching work, and like you think you're improving yourself. Like, don't you think that you're really like self-important to be doing that type of thing? And then of course what happens, that comment throws them right off and they're back to square one again, and they're feeling totally emotionally thrown off. And we're back in the session next time and they're explaining this to me. That does happen sometimes. But again, I think the further you go into the process, the more work you do. Again, if you even are looking at the subconscious mind as a system, you're constantly feeding it information with repetition and exposure. You're rewiring yourself all the time. The more that you do that, the more something is going to stick. That's just the way everything works. So the further into that process they go, the less problems they have, essentially.
Yeah. Good. Yeah. There was an audio that I listened to. I forget. I think it was an old chiropractor, Richard J. Santo, I think was who was talking about it. But he was talking about metaphysical exchanges. And I think they used like a particle accelerator or something where they shot two atoms or two particles in complete opposite directions, like miles and miles. Yeah. And then they changed I think the polarity of one of them, And without ever having to actually do anything to the other one, the other sides changed and they came back with the same force, and it came back together. And that's what you were kind of talking about, where if you change your energy, then those around you's energy is also going to have to change. And then their perception of you should also change as well. And your thoughts, your feelings and behaviors reinforce that new version of you, and then you are to be accepted.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, obviously, I think each to their own. Everyone has a different belief in terms of this. If you want to look at it even just purely from a behavioral standpoint, it makes logical sense. If you change your behavior, for example, if you are in a relationship and you are constantly blaming your partner for his behavior, okay, that is the message that they're receiving from you. If you suddenly change your behavior with them, they are also going to respond differently to you and see you differently also, okay?
Yeah.
So just even looking at it from that standpoint, it makes sense in terms of the belief you have about yourself, and also the belief you have about what's outside of you, the people outside of you, what you expect to happen to you in your outside world. Then obviously, of course, you have your energetic aspect of things, where if you start to notice things in your life happening, like I'm at the point now where I can trace everything back to the belief that I had or the thought that I had about it. Now, obviously, I'm at the point now in my life where I think, after years and years and years of this, I mean, I sound like I'm saying I'm ancient. I'm really not. But I'm still in like my late 20s. I'm like, there's so many years.
Yeah.
But I'm at the point now where something will just happen and I'll be like, yeah, I thought about that this morning. I can pinpoint everything.
Awesome.
Yeah, because I see it in practice. And once you get to that point where you really just, even if you were to play a little bit of a game, like if you say for the next 3 days, I'm going to not take things so seriously in my life and just observe how things happen for me, what opportunities come to me, the way people speak to me, what they say to me, and find that connection to whatever inner dialogue I was having with myself. So if, for example, if I say, my next door neighbor, he always complains about this, this, and this, what's going to happen?
Yep.
So I always said to people who are kind of in that space of, I believe in manifestation, I don't really. I believe in it a little bit, I'm not quite sure. I say, no problem, take a few days, play the game the game with yourself and see what happens. Without taking life too seriously. After 3 days, you can go back to the way you were thinking before. No problem at all.
Yeah.
You have your beliefs, but try it out. Yeah.
It's fun. I mean, it's fun to mess around with that. Even like if you go to grocery stores, it's a fun game to play. Put a scowl on your face, like something mean, like just like you're mad, like you're just mad at the world, and see what happens. And then walk around with a smile on your face and more carefree, or like I'll sing the songs that are playing in the store. Like, I don't care if people hear. I'm not yelling at the top of my lungs, but like if people are next to me, they'll hear me singing. The interactions are completely different. I could see the same person because I go to the same grocery store. I could see the same person 2 different days in a row. And if I bring in positive energy, they're going to be positive to me. If I bring in negative energy, it repels them the hell away from me. And they're just like, oosh, I don't want to talk to this guy today. So it's fun. It's enjoyable. And we've got kids, so you could play that game with the kids too, where you bring in a positive energy. And I failed at it last night because I was trying to use like my mean voice to the kids. And I went up to my son, and my son was like, I don't believe you. And I'm like, darn it. So I did it to my daughter, and she's like, Dad, you're just joking with me. I'm like, dang it. But internally, I'm just being playful. I'm just having fun. And they were able to perceive it without me even doing anything. So it's fun to play.
Exactly. Yeah. Because you don't identify as a mean person. You don't identify as especially in the role of the father.
Yeah.
Because we can have lots of different personas. Like, this is the way you can say, for example, this is the way I'm with my partner. This is the way I talk to my parents. This is the way I'm with my neighbors. We all have these little different personas that we kind of embody within all of us. But yeah, there is no flaw in the system. That's the funny thing when we really start to look at it and be a little bit grounded in our approach to it. Be analytical. Be very, observing of yourself. And even another point on that is, I often say to my clients, like, I want you to flip it, because a lot of our suffering comes from being overly attached to our environment and being emotionally reliant on our environment in relation to what we understand our environment is telling us about who we are. So it's like if someone says something we perceive as being nasty to us, the type of job that we have, what we believe we're worthy of, we'll never get that promotion. All of these little things are, for the majority of people, really informing the idea we have about ourselves. And what I always kind of hope and wish for my clients is that they're able to flip that. And I always say to them, if you're able to be, it sounds ridiculous, but 90% internally focused, and 10% externally, but not in a selfish way, but in a way that you're able to see that literally your whole world is a projection of you. Literally. And sometimes even, it does sound a bit extreme to say 90-10, but I think also because normally it's the other way around. Normally we're 90% focused on our environment and we're just being tossed around in the waves of whatever our current circumstances are. And 10% like, okay, my self-care, I'm going to have a bath, in the evening. Or like, I'm going to do my skincare or something like that, which I mean,
if your environment allows, right? If your environment allows for it. Or that's one of the first things, that 10% is one of the first things to get deleted out of the nightly routine because you're too tired or the kids are stressful or whatever it may have been.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a natural response to our reality, our real life, because that's the way we're primed as human beings. We have to be responsible. When you're an adult, you must behave like an adult. You have to do the correct things and all of that. But we can be sucked into that a little bit as well, in the sense where it kind of gives you this false illusion of what's really going on. And there's no possible way for me to come here and talk about the metaphysical aspect of things, the energy aspect of things, but then say, no, but you must pay attention to your current reality and you must spend 23 out of 24 hours every day focused on doing all the correct things in a step-by-step process. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, when people try to dabble in like the metaphysical or the woo-woo and it doesn't work time and time again, it doesn't work. What are the main things that you're seeing as a cause as to why the woo-woo is not working?
The number one reason to why it's not working for them specifically is because they're trapped in this idea of trying, looking for the next thing, always searching for more information, basically never actually implementing, never actually embodying what they're learning. And I mean, that goes across the board for nearly every principle out there, every discipline. I'm sure you see it all the time in relation to health. You're going to be stuck because you're actually keeping that as part of your identity. You're never actually who you want to be or what you want to be. You're actually the person who is trying to be different, trying to change, trying to, to be someone, but you're not because you're trying. You're never actually them. You never reach that end goal because your identity is trapped in that middle point. So yeah, I don't believe there is, like I was saying earlier, there is no flaw in the system. It's not the case where it works for some people and it doesn't for others. More than likely, you're just not being devoted enough to the process, to either your clarity of vision, to what you are creating for yourself, to who you are going to be, and your patience with that repetition process and the time that it's going to take for you to rewire your mind. We need to give ourselves a little bit of grace with that, because I think we're in the TikTok era. Everyone's looking for a quick fix.
Yeah.
You know this as well, with health.
Drives me crazy. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So everyone's looking for a quick fix. Obviously, we're dealing you as well with health, but we're dealing with heavy emotions. We're dealing with people in distress a lot of the time and looking for, they feel like they have a deadline to change. They need to change now because maybe something is really distressing that's going down in their in their reality. But we need to understand that we've been programming ourselves unconsciously all of our lives to believe we are a certain way and to think a certain way. So if you've been saying for 16 years that you are an unconfident person, you're naturally an unconfident person, you never feel confident, give yourself more than 3 days to become a confident person.
Yeah.
You know? Because whatever you programmed, whatever the length of time it's taken, we need to give ourselves a substantial amount of time to go in the complete opposite way. Because your brain is the system. You're feeding it information all the time.
Yeah. And that's, I was going to kind of ask that question too, because I'm alluding to working with patients and clients who have been working in like the self-help or the healing realms, and they're going to retreats, or they're doing these courses, and it's like every time I talk to them, there's a new course that they're taking or a new retreat that they're going to. And what I notice is when they go to some of these retreats, they are bringing up past traumas, but then not really learning how to handle those past traumas. So then it like goes into their identity bag. And instead of it being like, I'm Jacque and I have this, it's like, now I'm Jacque and I have this and I got this and I do this because of this. And it becomes like this new identity, or like, I can't fix this because when I was 2, I got hit in the head with a spoon. And so like, I can't wear hats or something ridiculous, but like that type of thing occurs. Do you see that, like, as you're working with people, do you see that some people take that as a new identity that you have to try to work through as well?
Yes, I've experienced, I suppose, different forms of that with different clients. So I've 100% come across the therapy loop, in the sense where people become addicted to going to therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And like what you said, you know, it becomes a part of your routine almost with who you believe you are, that you go to this therapy session and you rehash all of your past pains and traumas. And it feels really good to let it out and speak it and have someone hear you. But what happens is you finish that therapy session, you go back into your real life, and actually, like what you said, you've done nothing to actually transform that pain. You've brought it up to the surface, but then you've let it kind of sit there, and you've reminded yourself of it again. So you're almost like relighting that fire, rekindling it.
Yeah.
But then like sitting with it and being like, oh, there you are again. And then you want that quick fix again of like booking again 2 weeks later and going back to your same therapist and doing the whole process all over again. And I definitely experienced that, and I always, you know, remind clients of that, to be very wary of that. Now, technically speaking, if you are working with a coach, that normally is the second step, in that process of a lot of clients that I work with, they've done the therapy part of their, you know, journey in their own lives. And now it's like, okay, I've done that part where I needed a space to be heard. I needed someone to talk to, and it served that purpose. But they've realized they got to a place where it wasn't actually shifting anything for them in their practical lives. So they wanted to go into a coaching kind of medium where they're like, okay, what are the steps now that I need to take? And on the other hand, I've definitely come across clients who, you know, were basically not ready to be coached, were not ready to be mentored, because if something was to come up during the session from a past memory, for example, like there are certain aspects of coaching or mentoring where, to even understand what our core belief is, we need to dig down a little bit to be like, okay, where is this thought coming from? Because it's not actually looking at the past, it's who we are still identifying as because of something that happened in the past.
Right.
You know? Now, I have had the experience where that came up in a session and it completely threw the client off and really unsettled them emotionally. But actually, you know, for that client, they recognized afterwards they actually weren't ready yet in the process. Like there was still a lot there for them to heal. you know, and we need to do that healing before we're able to actually move forward. 100%.
That's exactly what I was trying to ask you to answer, but without being able to formulate the exact question that I needed you to answer. Because I had a feeling you were going to hit the nail right on the head. And I love like your approach. It's a breath of fresh air. It really is. And there are so many coaches and people in this space where they're phenomenal at unpacking, but then they do nothing to coach them. But then they sell them another program. Like, oh, now do this program. You'll heal this way and you'll heal this way. And it's like dragging all of your drama behind. It's like each time you meet with somebody or do a thing, it's like, oh, there's another suitcase, attach it to the chain. And then you just keep dragging it with you. Like, this is getting really hard. And then I feel really bad because I'm an empath. Like, I feel really emotionally bad for these people. And like these women are just like, I don't know what the heck to do with this anymore. And my first thing is like, well, stop thinking about what's wrong from the past and start worrying about how you're going to be in the future. Like, you know, work on one thing at a time, tackle one thing at a time, but stop bringing up new stuff until you get rid of the stuff that you already know is in front of you. Like, it's such a pet peeve of mine. And again, it's such a breath of fresh air to hear you say that. I'm like, thank God somebody's answering this the proper way, because it's so stressful to me. You have no idea.
I know. Also for me, thank you for saying that. No, because also for me, I feel like, the program that I offer is a structured step-by-step program. And I definitely, when I introduce it to clients, because I offer single sessions, and obviously the single session is great. But I will say to people, like, the single session is great for a bit of a refresher. You know what I mean? Like, it's impossible to get through everything in 1 hour together. And especially if someone is booking in, like, they book in for one session in October and then they book in again in February. And then it's like kind of this continuous pattern. It's like, I would much prefer if you do the program, you go through literally all the modules in a step-by-step, you're held accountable. And then by the end of it, you don't need to book in with me ever again, kind of a thing. And I think the same way as you on that, where, I personally myself have, enrolled in these courses, and I found myself kind of sitting there being like, this is very wishy-washy and very kind of, it's a lot of fluff. I think there's a lot of fluff out there. And unfortunately, wellness is now this very overly commercialized industry, and everyone's trying to sell something, and everyone's trying to make new content, and actually I was even speaking with a client the other day who is kind of always looking to consume new information, and I was saying that's fine, but you also must be aware that we're actually overcomplicating the processes, even with all of these coaches. Like, I know I have a few key ideas, and then everything else stems from that. Okay. Now, all of these people who are like throwing out all this content all the time, I guarantee you most of that is just trying to bulk up their social media because they need content, because they're selling something. So we have to be very aware of that as well. Yeah.
I want to try to stump you in a way. So it's going to be not a trick question per se, but this is more for, because this stumps me. And obviously this isn't my field of passion. I'm passionate about it, but I just don't have the knowledge of it. I have a lot of patients, like clients, patients, that have relationships, and it can come down to certain religions where a woman has her place and is just designed to basically shut up, don't say anything, don't act a certain way. And I'm seeing this surge of women feeling called that they aren't just, and they're not supposed to just put up and shut up. They're supposed to live and they're supposed to thrive. When you see a client like that, how do you work in a container where you can work on improving the confidence and doing all that stuff that you do for the patient and having it stick, even though the spouse is just like a battle axe of the spouse that just is a horrible human being? How would you handle that?
Well, in general, anyway, I'm not actually moving too far beyond the borders of what I'm mentoring people on, even, you know, with an Irish woman or a French woman or someone from a culture where they have potentially a lot more personal freedom than, you know, a client in that position. Because the work that I do with people is that inner work. And it's actually being able to emotionally regulate despite whatever environment you find yourself in. Because everything that I do is, the focus is the internal process, the focus is the inner transformation. Because, you know, it would be a little bit hypocritical, like contradictory of me if I was to say everything, you know, the outside world is a mirror of what's going on within us. Everything is responding to our, you know, internal dialogue and our core beliefs. But then to say, okay, but if you're in this type of environment, actually it's the opposite. And you should do a lot of work outside of you and ignore what's going on. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
my approach would absolutely be the same. Obviously, the types of the conversations in terms of like discussing what they're facing, what they're going through would be different. And there would be
Right.
different type of sensitivity
Sure.
and a different type of approach from me about that. But inner power is inner power. And I can't sit here and say that if that woman did all the same work, that she wouldn't have the result that she wanted, unlike any other American woman, European woman, anything like that.
Yeah.
So that would probably be my answer to that. Yeah.
Awesome. I couldn't stump you. But
I mean, you could try
that's
again
great.
if you want.
No, honestly, that's one of my biggest things, because like I can run the most exotic stress panel in the world, like the biggest, baddest, most markers on it. And if I'm like, oh, hey, you're stressed out, and like I'll see like the circadian rhythms, and like women will come home from work, or their husbands will come home from work, or whatever the case may be, and cortisol, it goes like way off the charts high. And then I'm like, what's going on around this time? They're like, oh, I've got this going on. I've got this going on. I'm like, does it stress you out? And they're like, no. I'm like, you're lying. Obviously it is. Like, it's on here. But like peeling back those layers, a lot of the times, like women don't feel supported, or they feel judged. And women against women can be some of the most harsh and critical people in the world. I don't understand it. So having the knowledge of like, if these patients are listening, they'll know exactly who they are because we talk about this. But knowing, hey, you know, if you work on that, or when you work on that internal environment, and you work on that inner self and that inner confidence, then you can enjoy your environment. You can enjoy your surroundings, because again, your outer environment is going to mirror your inner environment. So that's what I ultimately wanted to try to like help like get out of you, is like, hey, there's hope for those who are stuck in some of the toughest spots, in my opinion. Just basically give you a call, contact you.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's that famous, well, not so much famous, but well-known kind of catchphrase within the metaphysical aspect community, you know, law of attraction, law of assumption. All the folks within that community, it always comes back to this one phrase of circumstances do not matter. Okay, because a lot of people are like, well, what about this? I have this going on in my life. Surely this matters. And like, I'm the exception. My life can change, you know, but in actuality, circumstances, not one circumstance matters in relation to changing your life, in relation to changing who you want to be. And like what you were saying there as well, it was a great point, you know, when we change our internal world, that reflects back to us. But it's not only changing what we think about ourselves, it's also actually changing the way we think about other people and what we expect for them to be like and how they treat us, you know. And that is all energetic as well. So you can't look at one aspect and ignore the other. You can't say, oh, it's possible for me to change myself and for people to see me differently, but it's not possible for me to see them differently and for them to behave differently with me. You see what I mean? It all works together.
Love that. Yeah. I me personally, I try to try, and I do. There's sometimes I'm very successful, and other times the emotion, my inner world creates my outer reality. And I'll work things through what I call the perception filter. So before I allow an outside circumstance to affect me, I run it through the filter and I'm like, hold on 1 second before I get mad or angry. And I always use the example of traffic. If a car cuts me off or somebody's rude to me or whatever, but the traffic is usually the easiest. If somebody cuts me off, I could get mad, sure, but I don't know if that person just got a phone call that their wife is in labor or that their kid broke their leg or something happened. It's an absolute emergency and they need to gun it and go. Yes, it's not the safest, but that has nothing to do with me at all. And I can perceive it as such, and then I can carry it around as such, but it's baggage that doesn't belong to me. So that's what I work to do on my own, to try to run things through that filter before I react to the situation, because I don't want to absorb the stress of the world. There's way too much of it out there.
Yeah, it's funny when you're saying the analogy there of the traffic, because I'm living in Italy now. So, I mean, the road rage here is something else I've never experienced in my life ever before. I mean, I'm Irish, so I come from a culture that's very like politically correct and very like, no, you go ahead, no problem, you go ahead, no, really, you go. So the opposite in that sense, and even I perceive, he won't mind me saying that because he knows I say to him all the time, like my own partner, and like he, the typical Italian response of just being like, oh my God, like this person went in front of me, this is terrible. And I, sometimes I just think like, but why are you doing that to yourself? Like, why are you actually, because as well for me, like the Italian reaction is like this big reaction, Mediterranean reaction. And for me, it's like, wow, like you're really choosing to kind of almost give yourself that level of like drama and stress in your morning for something that's actually very small. It's not actually anything bad that essentially happened to you, and again, it's that awareness of the other person isn't being affected at all by your reaction. You're only causing yourself the stress and the frustration. And like what you said is great there, because I think you're saying it has nothing to do with you. Like that, what other people do to you has essentially nothing actually to do with you. It's all to do with them and the way that they're like viewing their lives and themselves and the role they're playing in their lives. And that's even a big part of being able to detach emotionally from our reality and look to ourselves and go inward, is not taking things personally, because we normally take everything personally, don't we?
Yeah. Well, I think sometimes too with even the exposure thing, when you're like, most people are used to the same days, right? Wake up in the morning, drink their same cup of coffee out of the same coffee mug they drink their coffee out of for the last 20 years. Kids will do whatever. Then they'll get them off to school. Then you jump in a car. You're in your car. You go to work. Like you said, talk to the same person. And it's like wash, rinse, repeat every day. And sometimes I feel like the road rage part of things is they're like, I'm so bored with this same life every day that I want adrenaline, because adrenaline's addicting. So when they get angry, they're like, oh, I feel alive. Finally, my day is so freaking boring. Now I'm going to lash out at this person, and I'm going to carry this story to work so I can tell everybody at work what happened to me. And then I'm going to carry that same rage back home, and I'm going to tell my family when I get home. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like that can be a pattern. Yeah.
I've never thought, that's a great point. I've never thought about it that way. It's just you're wanting to have an interesting story, basically.
Yeah. Because life is boring. Because a lot of people choose to just have the same life, and that's for some people. It's not for me. It would drive me absolutely crazy, and I probably would be a lot more angry if I chose that life. But yeah. So in terms of like how people can find you, reach out to you, and like what services do you offer? I know you said one-on-one coaching. You have the course that you sell as well. Are there any other valuables that you have for people?
Yeah, well, I suppose the people can email me. Will I call out my email now, or you'll have it below probably the podcast?
I'll have it below. Yep.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. So, I mean, if you want to directly contact me, even to just inquire about scheduling a session with me or something like that, you can email me. And I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Otherwise, at the moment, the only social media platform I actually have is my Instagram. So you can also message me through there. In relation to the services that I currently have, I actually make a point to only do one-on-ones. So I don't offer any group coaching, and I don't offer, as of yet, any kind of prepackaged, like, you know, you download the course and you do it yourself. I don't do that. And the reason for it is, well, it's a lot more work anyway, doing one-on-ones.
Yeah.
So there's that. The days are long,
Yeah.
but it's extremely rewarding. And to be honest with you, it's 100% more beneficial and more transformative to the client, because I mean, we're just here like you and me together. Like, you can speak freely. You know, I run you through everything, and I apply it to directly like what you are experiencing in your life right now, what you need. And like, you can interrupt me at any time and say, like, hold on a second, what about in relation to what happened to me yesterday? How does that work? What do I do? Kind of a thing. So I just find that intimate experience in relation to, I mean, because we're talking about personal power. Like, we're talking about becoming your best self. In my opinion, you need that space. Like, I don't think it's any good for me to create like a, you know, a course with like 10 journaling prompts and then give it to you and be like, here you go, you know,
Good luck.
run with it. Yeah, good luck. Yeah, change your life, you know.
Yeah.
So I definitely feel like that reflects like the value of the work that I hope to give to people. So I can offer people my single sessions. I can offer people my program, which is actually 7 sessions in a package deal, and that follows kind of a step-by-step structure, and a module by module process. And I also have my birth chart reading and mentoring session, which is a little bit different and something we have not talked about yet today. But going back to the energy aspect of things, your birth chart is essentially what energies you came into this lifetime with. So it's a very intensive blueprint of your complete personality, mixed with everything that you attract into your life experience. And that sounds really intense, because it really is. So
it is, yeah.
It's a 2-hour session, and I try to get through all the information I have, and all the information I will tell you is completely unique to you. And like I say, it's essentially your soul's blueprint for what you experience, who you are when you are operating on autopilot. So when you don't intentionally change anything about yourself to experience something different. So why that's really valuable is because it shows you the foundation that you're working with. And it shows you, for example, if you're always experiencing certain patterns in relationships, you're always attracting the same type of person, that's going to be in there, guaranteed. Your purpose is going to be in there. You know, the type of work that best suits you is going to be in there. We're going to get into it. And then from there, I actually like mentor people on how to change certain patterns and certain things that they don't want to experience anymore, and things like that. So I have all that going on. So basically that's what I have at the moment, but it is all like a one-to-one mentoring basis, which I really like.
Awesome. And the birth chart, if I remember correctly, because I'm fairly confident we've done that, because especially like the purpose thing, like I was basically called here to serve. I've been told like by shamans and gurus and all these people, like, you're designed to be a healer, server, you're supposed to be in fertility. I'm like, I'm already there. I'm like, pat myself on the back. But what I noticed, I think it was the birth chart, was if you are operating outside of your blueprint, you also tend to get a host of symptoms that are basically telling you like, hey, you're not operating with your divinity right now. Get back on path and fit front and center. Because people will be like, well, you could read that chart, but that's not me at all. That's not who I am, but that doesn't have anything to do with me. Like, well, you've been living out of alignment for this long. You're on 48 different medications. Like, it is you if you just get back to being healthy and being you. Do you experience that too?
I definitely experience it. Like, I would say to everyone at the beginning of their session for their birth chart, like, you know, if something feels like it doesn't resonate for you, either you have intentionally changed it already, and it was who you were before, or you have not maybe had the experience yet to trigger it up in you. So like, for example, like if I was to say now, like, this is really going to make sense now for anyone who doesn't understand astrology and that type of thing, but if I was to say, for example, your rising sign is in Virgo, okay? Now, if I am working with a client who is 25 years old, your rising sign normally really grasps onto you after that age. So they could be like, but I'm actually, oh my God, no, I'm not like that at all. I would be terrified to be that. And I'm saying, yes, because you have not yet experienced the occasion that triggers this energy up in you that make you realize, oh my God, this is actually who I am and this is who I'm becoming. So I 100% agree with you. I think there are a lot of things that we can do in our physical environment to throw us off of who we are being. Now, on the opposite side of that, I definitely think we have free will. And I definitely think we can change aspects of our chart, but only as far as what we have the intention to change. Like, for example, if we are in, like I'm saying, like a loop that we do not want to be in anymore, we can 100% change that. And that's actually the work that I do with people. But if on the other hand, it's like we have these natural gifts to be a healer in this lifetime, and we're like, no, I don't want to look at that. I don't want to see it. I'm not that. I'm meant to be a lawyer. My parents told me I'm a lawyer and I'm going to be a lawyer and I don't want to look at it. That's when you're going to keep on, like, things are going to happen to try and keep on pulling you back to you being a healer, but you're going to have all this resistance and it's going to be all over the shop. So I do see that a lot as well.
Yeah. And for people who know my story, like, that's what happened to me. Like, I was an idiot through college, through high school. I was bullied, and then I turned into the bully. Like, I was phenomenal at fighting. And then I was going to go off to chiropractic school, but I was using my hands to hurt. I have very powerful hands. And I would joke around and say I would practice the one punch technique, where I would just hit somebody and it just took one punch and they would just fall down and I would move on with it. And then I got jumped in 2009, went on the other end of it, and I'm like, so since 2009, that was like my message from God. It was like, stop using your hands to hurt and use your hands to heal. So I went to chiropractic school, and that was my passion. So since 2009, I haven't hit anybody. I haven't done anything with my hands to hurt. I still have the skill. Like, if anybody messed with me or my family, it would come out. But since that time, I wasn't living congruent with my soul's purpose. And it was like God hit me with a sledgehammer. It was like, dude, stop it. Use these to heal people. And then there you go.
What an amazing story. Oh my God. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Isn't it crazy though that, like, you were feeling like the trappings of something, like you were feeling the idea of something, like using, your physicality, using something, you had power in here somehow, but it's just not going in the exact right direction for you, So I think that's fascinating. Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah. Well, follow-up questions for you. Who, besides obviously what you sell and where they could find it, we already answered that. Who do you look up to in the industry? Like, who are your mentors? If you're like, hey, if I could pick up a great book and read from so-and-so, who would that be?
My idea on this hasn't really changed over the years. I always go back to the greats in relation to, like, the original teachers of what I believe in. So Neville Goddard, I'm a big believer in, and also Dr. Wayne Dyer, I love. I think also Dr. Joseph Murphy a little bit, Seth also a little bit, but I think my main two would be Neville Goddard and Wayne Dyer. I have a soft spot in particular I really live by the teachings of Neville Goddard, but I feel like I have a soft spot for Wayne Dyer because when I was younger, my dad is also quite spiritual, and in Ireland especially, my dad now is 70, so, like, you can imagine all his life he was very spiritual, and coming from a very Catholic Ireland, was a bit strange. That wasn't well received. I mean, my dad went to London in the 80s to study acupuncture, and
oh wow,
and that was very unheard of. So he had all these, like, audiobooks and things at home, and as a teenager I would listen to the audiobooks of Wayne Dyer, and just that started to open my mind a little bit to kind of what is unseen. So I definitely recommend those two for people to get their hands on and have a go and listen to them.
Yeah, I love Wayne Dyer. I have his Moses Code meditation that anytime I go into my car, that's for whatever reason, that Bluetooth just connects in and it starts playing that meditation. My son's like, why are you always listening to meditation? I'm like, why not? It's great.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah. Well, awesome. Is there any parting knowledge that you would like to leave the listeners with?
Um, you know what? I think there's so much information out there, and I think it can be quite easy to fall into the trap of like feeling like you've done all the things and nothing ever works and nothing ever changes. And I could, like, for example, I could sit here now and you could ask me that question of like, okay, what's the final thing you want to say to people? And I could say like, do this one thing. And, you know, and then they'd be like, okay, Rachel said I need to do this one thing, so I'm going to do this tomorrow. And then the following day, they're going to watch another video where someone else says another thing, okay?
Yeah.
So I definitely just think, like, even if you were just to take on the idea that you are the one creating everything, and therefore you must believe that you can bring change into your life. Like, you must believe that you are able to do it. To not get stuck in that loop of constantly suffering because you're not able to actually change anything for yourself. And that goes for your physical health, that goes for your mental health, emotional health, spiritual health, all of it across the board. So I think that's where a lot of people are really suffering, is they're just stuck in that middle ground, and they're kind of operating where they're watching all the videos, reading all the books, enrolling in all the courses, but deep down they don't think they're actually going to actually be different at the end of the day. So I think the one thing I want to say to people is like, start believing that you have the capacity and the ability to actually change things for yourself, and you are actually going to change. Because again, that's another affirmation in your identity. Once you start saying that to yourself, your brain will naturally open the way for you to actually change. You know what I mean?
I love it. Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate you being on. This has been a very valuable podcast. I'm really excited for this to get released for people to be able to listen to. And then I'm hoping, you know, some emails and things will come through, or some new followers will jump over onto your page too and start asking some questions, because you have definitely been the most well put together person that I have talked to on this topic. And I've talked to a lot of people. So I want to commend you on that. And again, I'm very grateful that we found each other through Instagram so that we could bring each other value here. So thank you for being on.
Thank you so much, Jacque. That means so much. And I mean, I actually look at your work exactly the same. I love your grounded approach. And I think that's something that I'm always trying to ground myself in more and more. Because obviously, you know, I could come on here and, like I say, like the topics that I talk about, you know, I could get very, like, you know, head in the clouds with everything. But I really think there's such value in just having that very grounded approach. And I see that every day. I mean, I love listening to your podcast episodes, and I love like watching your videos and just seeing and listening to the advice and the information that you're sharing, because it is so grounded and it's so real, but it's also so holistic. And that's, I think we have that connection as well of just like looking at all the different angles of a subject and not just viewing it as black and white. And it just, I don't know, it just creates a different experience all around, I think, when you push things that way. So I want to thank you as well.
Yeah, absolutely.